Welcome to ET Energy World exclusive video interview series, Leadership Strategies for a Sustainable Energy Future. In this series, we bring you insights from the most influential minds shaping India's energy landscape, delving into strategic vision, business model transformation, and navigating the new frontiers of decarbonization. Today, we are profoundly honored to host a luminary whose contributions have not just defined but truly propelled India's journey towards energy independence and technological prowess. We are speaking with none other than Dr. Anil Kakodkar, Chancellor Homi Bhabha National Institute, Chairman Rajiv Gandhi Science and Technology Commission, and former Chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission of India. He is a Padma Vibhushan recipient whose visionary leadership has been instrumental in shaping our nation's nuclear power program. Thank you, Dr. Kakodkar, for joining us today for the ET Energy World Leadership Series. Dr. Kakodkar, looking ahead, the government's target of 100 gigawatt nuclear capacity by 2047 is incredibly ambitious. So, as India aims for the Viksit Bharat 2047, how do you envision nuclear energy contributing directly and indirectly to this vision, not just confined to electricity generation, but overall industrial growth?
Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. Uh, yes, the 100 gigawatt target, uh, I wouldn't call it incredibly ambitious, but it is ambitious. And but I must also point out that the so-called Vikasit Bharat, to me, Vikasit Bharat would mean the quality of life of average Indian should be comparable with the quality of life in a developed country, Vikasit country. And all those countries would have a human development index of around 0.95. So to me, Viksit Bharat means human development index in India to be around 0.95, and that in turn means a certain level of energy supply. And in Indian context, in my assessment, that energy supply would be around 28,000 terawatt hours per year. And you want that level of energy, uh, you have to kind of depend or rely only on clean energy sources because we also have uh, a commitment to net zero by 2070. So as we go through this transition towards clean energy, we have to enhance the supply of energy, but we have to also move towards clean energy sources. So let us look from the destination end. Uh, if you are sourcing 28,000 terawatt hours of energy and we have to do that purely from clean energy sources. Now, all renewable energy and in that I would also include large hydro put together, in my assessment, would take you barely around 8,000 terawatt hours. These numbers, there could be plus and minus.
Mhm.
So there is a huge gap between what can be delivered through renewable energy, including large hydro, and the requirement of the Viksit Bharat. And the difference, which is the larger part of the total requirement, has to necessarily come from nuclear. So, and seen in that light, 100 gigawatt would appear actually quite small. Because for meeting this kind of requirement, 100 gigawatt is also, I would say, an order of magnitude low. But this is a step in the right direction, and I think we must achieve that.
So, what do you see as the most critical shifts that are required to achieve this monumental goal beyond our current pace of development?
Well, there are several shifts that one may have to think about. For example, first of all, nuclear energy till recently uh, was on a kind of, there are barriers to getting this technology from it. So this technology has been developed within the country. And thanks to those restrictions, today country can boast of a complete self-reliance on nuclear technology, on all aspects of nuclear technology. Now, and that of course, it has been developed overcoming a lot of hurdles, a lot of time. So today we should have been at much higher level of nuclear energy capacity than what we are today. But because of these delays, but we have achieved technological self-reliance. But the bigger challenge is availability of fuel supply itself. And we don't have uh, sufficient quantity of what shall I say, commercially viable uranium resource. And but at the same time, a nuclear program has to begin with nuclear because that is the only fissile material available in nature. Now, and then there are difficulties in getting uranium from the global market. So we had this civil nuclear deal, which eased that path. So today we are able to get uranium. And then, as you would have noticed, last several years, nuclear program is in fact growing. Now the question is, it was growing. It has reached around 8.8 gigawatts. But between 8.8 gigawatts and 100 gigawatts, there is a huge gap. Now, so challenge number one is ability to do things much faster. So bigger, faster, that kind of thing. So it's more a management challenge, project management, resources management, and government policy, all those. This is one bucket. The second part is the uranium. Although we are able to access uranium, but uh, today the world uses uranium in what is known as one stream mode. In the sense, you use uranium in a reactor, and after energy production, that fuel is comes out of the reactor, and you treat this as a spent fuel, meaning it's a waste. Most of the world treats it like that. Now, with this approach, there are two challenges. One, that the total energy that you can get from a given quantity of uranium is actually two orders of magnitude lower compared to what it can be, what the innate calorific value of this nuclear material is. So, and if you want to realize that, then you must recycle uranium. So, uranium 235, which is the fissile component, which is very small. That is what produces energy in the first stage. Yes. But 238, which is the fertile component, and which is the larger share, some of it gets converted to plutonium, which is also fissile. So you reprocess and recycle this fuel, plutonium, along with more uranium. You can get more uranium, more energy out of it. So the world, see, India has been always championing closed fuel cycle. That's why we have developed reprocessing technology and also fast breeder reactor. Yes. But this is the second challenge, that we need to go to closed fuel cycle, and this is very important for us because I told you that we don't have sufficient quantities of commercially viable uranium, but we have plenty of thorium. In fact, we are the largest sort of benefit, largest reserves of thorium. So if we sort of move from the open cycle approach to closed cycle approach, and if we move from uranium to thorium, then we not only solve our we no longer would be dependent with foreign supplies of uranium, but also we can perhaps be the energy suppliers of the world. So there is so much of freedom that we have. So this is the second, and we must take care of both these approaches. Otherwise, what will happen? Uh, the current route, the way it is going on, the uranium reactor producing and the growth, it will take us up to some point, maybe 25 gigawatts, 30 gigawatts, and thereabouts. But in my assessment, when India's nuclear capacity reaches that level, India's demand for uranium would become maybe 10-15% of the global uranium supply. I'm talking about uranium production, not uranium in the mine. Uranium in the mine is plenty everywhere. There's plenty of uranium, plenty of thorium. We don't have enough uranium, we have thorium, but worldwide there is uranium. But if you look at the mining capacity, how much uranium is produced, today actually uranium production is slightly lower than the demand, and it is met by the dismantled weapons supply, down blending enriched uranium. Now, and that is almost coming to an end. And of course, because of demand, the production of uranium will go up. But in that interim period, uranium prices are bound to be volatile. And so, although there are no political barriers for importing uranium, I think there could be commercial challenges. For example, for oil, we have that our economy is dependent on oil imports, and we have that problem. And we may get into same situation. And the problem with nuclear fuel will be much more complicated than fossil fuel. So that's why I said that these two challenges we need to overcome. Number one, our implementation capacity, and number two, shift from uranium to.
So, what are the planned expansions or improvements in the entire nuclear fuel cycle infrastructure, including mining, fuel fabrication, reprocessing, and waste management to support the 100 gigawatt target?
Yeah. So to me, one is of course in the short run, uh, we have, for example, Nuclear Power Corporation is now well on its way to deploy 700 megawatt heavy water reactors. They have already done 3 units operational, and maybe more than a dozen reactors at different stages of construction. So that should be accelerated. And I'm very happy to see that along with NPCIL, now NTPC has joined hands. So NTPC will also. So the rate of deployment of 700 megawatt PHWR should go up. I would hope uh, NPCIL, NTPC, maybe some more joint ventures would kind of join this effort. So this is strategy number one. Strategy number two is, for example, just as we have the 700 megawatt PHWR, we also have 220 megawatt PHWR units, and we have many of them operational and with tremendous performance record. In fact, units at Kaiga, they have made the global record at one point of time for the longest uninterrupted run uh, anywhere in the world, for the world record. So it is our performance is at that level, globally best level. In terms of cost, these reactors are producing electricity at a very competitive rate. In fact, I must tell you, it is competitive. It's certainly competitive with respect to coal, but it's also competitive with respect to renewable energy. What people don't realize is the bids which were kind of the people cite about with respect to cost of solar or wind. These are the bids. This is a number for the solar project people who build the project and sell electricity at that level. But that is not the electricity that goes to consumer. And this electricity is intermittent, variable energy. So as far as grid is concerned, there has to be much larger investment in addition to generation of renewable energy uh, to make sure that you supply quality power to consumer. And that requires both a lot of storage capacity.
Yes.
You would have seen now earlier the bid used to be only solar plant or wind plant. Now they talk about BESS, the grid scale battery storage or pumped hydro storage.
Yes.
And moment those bids specified 8 hours storage at grid level, the cost has gone up. Now, and that is the cost because nuclear cost is the base load cost. So that is the cost you should really compare. And you will invariably find nuclear costs are cheaper compared to renewable energy.
How much difference would be if you could give a number on
Well,
this?
for example, today the older plants are of course varying between 2 rupees to four and a half rupees. If you have a plant constructed today, it will be maybe around 5 rupees, five and a half. Now, renewable energy today, if you see the bids, they are of that order. In fact, little higher. So, so to me, the 220 megawatt PHWR which I was talking about, they have become very important, and that is why there is a lot of industry interest for kind of leveraging that as a captive power plant, captive power for clean energy. And what has happened is, while we have our target for net zero at 2070, uh, there are barriers to the items produced using not so clean energy. For example, there is this carbon border adjustment mechanism. The European Union has planned that. And if the carbon footprint of Indian products is not below a given threshold, it will attract a significant carbon tax. And that would make our export very uncompetitive. And that is why industry has been now saying that, okay, you Bharat small reactor, industry is prepared to fund it, turn over the plant to nuclear power corporation for operation because they want clean power. And I think that should get operationalized quite soon. I don't know what is the status, but so that should be the second main stream. The third stream, according to me, should be the units for uh, kind of leveraging the brownfield site, which will be vacated by retiring coal plants.
Yes.
And that is where the SMRs come in the picture.
Yes.
Now, there is a lot of hype about SMRs, but SMRs, in the sense, people when they're talking about SMR, they are talking about the same old technology, PWR, BWR, whatever. What we need is a technology which will, because it's a small reactor that we want, and as I said, BSR, it's a 220 megawatt reactor. So as far as power capacity is concerned, it's in the same range. And so I'm glad that through BSR route, that activity is beginning. But one should have SMRs which meet again two criteria, two very important criteria. One, it should move in the direction in which India's program has to move. I talked to you about thorium. So all these current SMRs, they are all light water reactors running on low enriched uranium. I think we should move towards the reactors in which thorium is playing a big role and allow the transition to thorium to propagate. So this is first criteria it should meet. The second criteria it should meet is because these numbers will be large. They may not add too much of total capacity that will be added by the larger reactor, but these numbers will be quite large, fulfilling an important niche area. Now, larger the number of units, you you know, the, you must make it that much more safe. The core damage frequency for these reactors. If the reactor size is 110, the core damage frequency also should come down by that much so that the net uh, kind of risk to people does not go up.
Yes.
And so you need systems which will not cause any impact in public domain. You need systems, regardless of anything that may happen to the reactor, there will be no effect on the public. Now, so you need for SMR a reactor which will meet this criteria. And according to me, the molten salt thorium reactor is the ideal. And there are some people who are talking about the small medium reactor based out of MSR technology. And that is what we should move at. And and all this, whether it is 700 megawatt PHWR or it is 220 megawatt PHWR, we should slowly convert these reactors. These reactors can be converted from uranium to begin with to a mixture of uranium and thorium.
Mhm.
And you convert that, and the spent fuel coming out of that would become readily available for the molten salt reactor. So that is the route that I would say we should go. And of course, in parallel, we have that long-term three-stage program, fast reactors. We're talking about 500 megawatt fast builder reactor at Kalpaka. So that should come up very soon. We should have more fast reactors. So that's another growth path. But that also is towards thorium. This also is towards thorium. That is the
So, in addition to our indigenous nuclear program, what are the kind of international collaborations we are looking at in this field, which will
yeah,
accelerate the development
yeah,
of our nuclear energy sector?
yeah. I told you, one of the big challenges is our implementation rate. That's where I said that we should have NPC, NTPC, other. Now, in the same vein, I think external inputs which contribute to growth in capacity, nuclear capacity, is a welcome step. You might remember when we talked about civil nuclear cooperation, we talked about getting capacity established in India through international cooperation with Russia, with United States, with France. Now I'm happy that with Russia that collaboration is going on. At that time, Kudankulam 1 and 2 were kind of under construction, but now all others are going on. But unfortunately, the American and the French plans, they have not gone forward.
What is the
Now,
reason, sir?
well, there are two reasons, and the more important reason, according to me, is that these reactors are not viable. As I was mentioning, we had this plan of getting capacity added through cooperation with United States and France, along with the Russian Kudankulam project. Now, these are not gone because of an economic viability issue. Now, and I think that issue still, I'm not too sure whether it is resolved even now. And as I was telling you, the small medium reactor SMRs, even there the same issue will come. That is where I'm championing thorium molten salt reactor, if possible, developed within the country or developed through some collaboration. Uh, but uh, this is one as far as the imported reactors not making headway. The second problem is the question of liability, nuclear liability. Now, I think both these issues need to be addressed. The economic viability issue as well as now I have been always arguing that you want to make these viable. The value addition for the equipment, even for imported systems, has to take place in India. That difference, the, why the thing coming from Western world are more expensive is because the cost of living there is high, and the particularly cost of very well qualified technology competent resource, human resource, is very high, and that component in anything of high tech nature is usually very high. So in India, we have built our reactors much cheaper, our space program is much cheaper, our missiles, DRDO missiles compared to others are very cheap. Now, unfortunately, we have that mindset in Hindi, we say, no, ghar ki murgi dal barabar. We always feel imported thing is better. But the fact is, Operation Sindoor has actually proven this. Yes. So, if you want to get this foreign contribution to capacity addition, make a significant contribution, the value addition must still happen even for them within the country. And this I have been telling right since my time, but somehow people don't like this argument. And but the net result is it has not. But I hope it will. People will now learn their lessons, and this will grow. But I think it is important that we should not lose any avenue for capacity addition. So also this target is quite large. Cannot meet just by following only path A or path B or path C. We have to bring all the efforts together.
So going forward, sir, how do you see the engagement of the uh, private companies in building the nuclear capacity in India and operating it?
Well, you see, there is also a question of finance. The You want to build such a large program, you have to bring in large finance. Now, there are limits to how much finance government can. There are both. There is a question of equity finance, but there is also a question of the, the loan part of the debt part of the finance. Up to some point, it is okay because this business is a lucrative business. NPCIL, although it's a small program, they had a lot of difficulties. The projects got delayed and all. But the fact remains that NPCIL is a pricey A rated, triple A rated company for I think now decades without interruption, year after year. So there is some internal resource that gets generated in this company. But then, if the program implementation is up to some rate, then maybe internal resource will finance. But if you want to do it at a rate much higher than that, which is the case, then you require finance outside both what government budgetary resources can manage as well as what internal resources of the company can provide. And this is where I think the private participation becomes almost inevitable. So even when we talked about the civil nuclear cooperation, in my interaction with industry, I had said that industry should start participating in nuclear even at that time as a minority partner, which was permitted by the act at that time, and learn the ropes. And the time will definitely come when the private sector will become absolutely inevitable. And that time is about to come now. Now, today, what is happening is the private sector, we're talking about private sector entry into nuclear. But the readiness of private sector to do this is questionable because I told you it's not a question of importing some reactor, private sector making a tie-up with a foreign supplier and importing. If something is value added there and you bring, it's not going to be viable. So, and that is true whether government is doing it or private sector. But if you do it in a manner where value addition is here, then it is entirely now, and that private sector also has to learn to do this because manufacturing is anyway under the good part of manufacturing is being done in private industries. But you need to create an ecosystem where these they come together uh, and get technology from wherever, but do all manufacturing in the country and then get into utility business, which is inevitable at some stage it will happen. So, and that is the way, and that is, according to me, that is the right and practical way of entry of private sector into this business.
So, how are we going about developing the skill set for the anticipated size of nuclear energy sector that is going to be by, say, 2047?
Well, see, in atomic energy, let's talk. You require skill set at multiple levels. So let us talk from the highest level. So at the kind of senior technical level, in atomic energy we have the training school, and at one stage we had this training school at multiple locations. Now I understand it has come back again to Bombay the way it was earlier. But and that has been training, and we have I am also a product of that training. So then in addition, Nuclear Power Corporation has its own training school, essentially for the operators. With the BRC training school, it takes care of research and development, it takes care of design, it takes care of, you know, then NPCIL has to also worry about operation, maintenance, but they have that training program. Then there is question of at the uh, diploma in engineering that level, and then there is the artisan or worker level, and NPCIL has a training program for all that. Now, for example, NTPC is getting into nuclear, but for a number of years, NTPC engineers are being trained at training school. So, to begin with, new entities who come in, their training can be addressed in the facilities that already exist. But then progressively, they themselves also should start their own training program. This is one part. The second part is in the university system and also in the industry training capacity. Now, university system, what has happened is the job opportunities arising and the supply coming out of university that has to be matched. A number of times it has happened that the university started nuclear training program and they couldn't find job because everything was in government, and the government has its own training program. Now, so we'll have to do a proper matching. Whereas private sector gets in. As I said earlier, private sector, the entities which are getting in, they will have to start their own human resource development program. Universities can start their part of the training program in a manner that there is a balance between the demand supply of human resource. And this is doable in the sense in a country like India where we have demographic dividend, to say that we are not talking about subjects which are unknown, or we are not talking about technology. This has been doing for decades together. So this is, according to me, more a management problem. It's not a fundamental resource constraint of people or knowledge or something like that. It is entirely doable, and I think we can handle that.
So thank you, sir. Just one last question. So we are Economic Times is organizing the Energy Leadership Summit, which will bring together the stakeholders from like policymakers and the decision makers from the energy industry to a common platform. This is scheduled on 24th and 25th September in Delhi. What would be your message to the leaders from the industry to accelerate the deployment of nuclear energy in India?
Well, I have a couple of messages. Number one, I think we are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? Now, I'm not too sure. Atmanirbhar Bharat doesn't mean doing everything in the country. Atmanirbhar Bharat also, in addition to that, also means that our minds work in an autonomous way. So that is the best independence, right? Now, I'm not too sure how much autonomy in terms of our own thinking we have achieved. So both people at the policy making level in the government and also in the professional circle, as well as people in the industry, they have to get into this autonomous mind and look at India's requirement, India's resources, India's constraints, and the program should be designed taking these into account and not what is existing somewhere else, because that is existing for their requirement and we become only the what I may call market guinea pigs. So I don't want that market guinea pig mindset. I want Atmanirbhar, autonomous mindset. So this is number one. So second important thing is, we talk many things, but when it comes to doing new things, we have a copy mindset. We want to see somebody else has done it, and then we say that if somebody else has done it, then I also. So this is a follower mindset. A follower mindset will never make take you to number one position. By definition, you can at best make a good number two. You cannot become number. And many of our decisions are now, at least in nuclear, I can claim that we have that capability. And why I'm saying this? Because thorium has so much of importance in the Indian energy security kind of connotation. Now, nobody is going to take interest in thorium earlier than India because they have plenty of uranium. So, if we now say that, well, if nobody is taking interest in thorium, then should I wait for that? And if you wait that, your energy security problem is going to be more and more acute. So, you must give up the follower mindset and you be ready to be the first mover. And there is a huge opportunity in being a first mover because then you can become exporter of thorium based energy system. And whatever are Arab countries to the world for energy supply, India can be that. But Arab countries, they only supplied the fuel energy material. Technology came from somewhere else. India can be both energy supplier along with technology, like what United States is. So we should have that kind of ambition. So I would urge the industry, particularly, to take the country forward with that kind of intention. And that's my.
Thank you, sir. It's been an honor interacting with you. And thank you so much for gracing us with your time today.